Alright, so with next-gen rumors really heating up, I think now is a pretty appropriate time to talk about some PlayStation 5 features that we really want to see out of the platform. And we kind of have to do this video now because it's not really much of a wish list if we get more rumors kind of confirming or denying these features that we're going to talk about. And certainly we have to do it well before a reveal of PS5 because, again, it won't be a wish list. We'll just know what PS5 does or doesn't do once we officially see it. So in this video, we're going to go over 10 PlayStation 5 features, not only that I think the system should have, but more importantly needs to have in order to be a big success. So without wasting any time, let's get into our first wishlist feature, which is none other than backwards compatibility. I think at this point Sony understands the importance of this feature. They hear you loud and clear. They know people want this feature. They're not dumb, but they were probably very outspoken with PS4 because they were just in a rock and a hard place. And that is what they were doing. They were downplaying it by saying, you know, things like, oh, backwards compatibility is a feature that's often talked about but not often used. This, that, and the other. I mean, PS4 just was not capable of emulating PlayStation 3 games. It just was not going to happen because of PS3's cell processor. It just would have taken way too much time, money, effort, and resources to possibly make a few games work, depending on the severity of the issues, and not going to happen. And yes, there's good examples like RPCS3 on PC, which does have a varied success with titles. It does seem to work quite well, but that's actually a good example of why it wouldn't work on PS4. You know, some games are very hit and miss. Sure, they might be playable from start to finish, but there may be bad textures, low frame rate, broken menu, this, that, and the other. Hardware manufacturers don't deal with that stuff. They make sure the game is completely playable from start to finish with no major issues. This is why Microsoft curates the games on Xbox One. That's why Microsoft doesn't release the emulator and let people play at their discretion to see what works and doesn't work. They make sure everybody has a very good experience, and that's what Sony would have to do on PS4, and that's what they didn't want to be liable for. And certainly with playing PS3 games, and even further back with PS2 and PS1. And I think the reason why they didn't explore PS1 and PS2 games on PS4 in a greater capacity is because they've spent all this time working on a better emulator for PlayStation 5. And now we can get to PS5 and say right off the bat, PS4 games should be no problem. We know that PS5 is probably going to be on the x86 architecture, which is what PS4 is based on. And so, in theory, playing PS4 games should be no problem. In fact, PS4 Pro was our proof of concept with that, so we should expect this to be no problem moving forward on PlayStation 5. But we've got recent patents suggesting that Sony is working on a new emulator, and both of these patents have the inventor listed as Mark Cerny, who is the lead architect on PS Vita, PS4, and PS4 Pro. So we know Mark is definitely looking into this in a huge capacity. One patent being on CPU ID impersonating, another one being on bus operation. Both patents make references to legacy titles, so it would certainly imply games beyond just PlayStation 5, so certainly PS4, and even further back to PS3, PS2, and PS1. So I think Sony is trying to make PlayStation 5 the ultimate PlayStation, and so this would be an absolutely big headlining feature. If Sony can reveal PlayStation 5 and walk up on stage and say, guess what, PlayStation 5 will play every single PlayStation game you own as far back as 1994 from the original PlayStation. If they can confidently walk on stage and announce that to the world, this thing is going to be an easy sell for many consumers. Now for our number 2 feature, it's kind of a given, but I'm still bringing it up just to keep people in check in relation to this, but more power. Obviously, we want PlayStation 5 to be a very powerful machine. We want it to show us why it's better than a PlayStation 4, but I think the big ticket item here is that everybody wants 4K 60 frames per second across all games. They just want that to be the new standard. They don't want to have to even see another 1080p image ever again. They don't even want to see checkerboard rendering. They want full 4K, and they definitely want that very important 60 frames per second. But we have to keep in mind, it's a console. It's going to be a high volume box released for the mass market consumer at a hopefully affordable price of around $400 to $500. And the reality of the situation is, this is not up to Sony. People sometimes don't understand when I mention this, but developers are always the ones who choose their frame rate and their resolution. People just think that it's always PlayStation 4's fault or always the console's fault for not providing enough power. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, we can go as far back as PlayStation 2. There are 1080i games on PlayStation 2. It depends on how the developer wants to make their game. You know, as a closed box, because consoles are closed boxes, you have to allocate your resources to, you know, where you want to put them. You know, you only have so much. It's like starting a new character in a video game, and you get 3 little starting points that you can attach to certain traits of the character. Do you want to add all the way to strength? Do you want to add it all the way to your physical performance? Do you want to add it all the way to your speed? It's kind of the same deal, right? And so developers often always are increasing, well, in recent years, they're increasing their resolution much higher, they're increasing graphical fidelity much higher, and leaving frame rate around 30 frames per second. Now, some developers go that extra mile and they take down the graphical fidelity and make sure that frame rate is the be-all end-all part of their game. I would hope we're in a place where most developers just kind of go, okay, you know what, let's just do 4K 60 frames. Let's not go crazy with just pushing our texture detail through the roof and doing all these crazy hair physics that make it impossible to achieve 60 frames per second. You know, because that's really what happens, is they do all these very ambitious things in terms of their environment, their open world. Stuff like that brings down the resolution and the frame rate. If they offset those things and understand that people want 4K 60 frames instead, that would be great. But the fact of the matter is, even if Sony releases a $1,000 console, there's going to be some developers out there that are still going to just push graphics to the absolute max. But when talking about PS5's theoretical power, the current rumor is Sony is once again going with AMD, which is not really surprising at all. The AMD CEO more or less confirmed that, saying that they're providing the chipsets for PlayStation 5 and the next generation Xbox. Somewhere theorized around 3.2 gigahertz. For perspective, PS4 Pro is around 2.10, 2.11 gigahertz. The rumored custom chipset is AMD Gonzalo, but we don't really know much about that. That's all rumors. We don't, it's all conjecture. The point is, though, we all would love 4K 60 frames. The system is probably going to be very powerful. It's certainly going to give us some very good-looking games. Let's just hope most developers agree on doing a full 4K 60 frames and not going too crazy with their graphics or ambitions with their open worlds or whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. Number 3, a next generation PlayStation VR. Now, we know current rumors are suggesting that PlayStation 5 will have the breakout box built into the system. PlayStation VR currently has a little breakout box that reprojects the image onto the TV, so that will apparently be built into PlayStation 5. That's all well and good. But some of the key features I want out of a next generation PlayStation VR, not only do I want that breakout box out of the equation, I want as few cords as possible. Wireless would certainly be great, but we're not quite there yet. And we're not even quite there in terms of getting the blur down that well or the motion sickness down that well. I mean, the advancements are good, but it's still going to take possibly 2 or 3 generations after this upcoming one for it to really be where we want it. But we're still going to see some pretty fine improvements, I think. I think the important thing is to probably get a vastly improved input method, so ditch PlayStation Move, but basically deliver a true sense of hand-to-hand motion and make it work very well in all lighting settings possible. Sometimes that's an issue for some people in terms of the amount of lighting in the room with the PlayStation Move controllers. Just do some sort of next-generation technology that makes this not only work seamlessly, but painlessly as well. Number 4, I feel like this is the least likely one to happen, but I think it certainly needs to happen, and it's a UI that's more tailored to the TV and desktop experience. A perfect blend between the two, I guess you'd say. Now that we're living in an age where PC is doing so well and so many people are turning to PC and so many people enjoy playing PC games, that's great. I think Sony needs to understand that they need to stay a bit relevant in that space, and so make the UI of PlayStation 5 a situation where it's a healthy blend between the TV experience and a desktop experience. Let us do some file management. Let us, have a pretty robust web browser. I'm not saying make it a full-blown computer, but certainly more akin to PlayStation 3, where it was a situation where you could connect many things to it. It had an SD card slot, compact flash, you could rip CDs to the platform, you can store files locally to the hard drive. Those are the kind of things I miss from PlayStation 3 that's not here in PS4, and I understand we're kind of moving away from that. We're moving away from physical files, we're moving to streaming and things like that, not having physical content anymore, but it's just something that I think Sony should try to tailor to a certain subset of consumers today. And that's, of course, making sure the UI uses some sort of highly optimized XMB that still makes it very easy to navigate through the menus and get to the content you're looking for, and, using Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. Don't, throw those things to the side. Still make that very accessible. But I think finding a blend between those two would be great for PlayStation 5. Now, moving on to number 5, blockchain technology. So blockchain, I think it's still today very much so in its infancy. Not many companies utilize it, but some are really trying to capitalize on it, pioneer it. Sony does have a patent regarding blockchain that's quite old now, maybe a year old, something like that, and it's in reference to, videos, music, TV shows, and at one point there's a very small mention of games. So I'm not sure that they're really looking into this with PlayStation 5, but I think it's something that needs to... I think something Sony could do to break the mold, to sort of disrupt the industry a little bit. Blockchain, of course, is a very highly specialized DRM, digital rights management, a situation where you could possibly buy and sell digital content. or it follows you everywhere across multiple devices. And not only is it different, but I think it says a lot about how Sony's trying to take PS5 into the future, which I would hope is what they're trying to accomplish. Now, number 6, Dualshock 5. Don't do anything crazy with it. Basically, I want this thing to be very traditional. Keep the controller relatively the same. Don't add a new input method. That was the problem with DualShock 4, is that touchpad. Look, the touchpad, it more or less turned into another start and select button. I mean, the first, year and a half, 2 years of PlayStation 4, a lot of first-party titles used it in a very unique way with swiping gestures and things like that. But the fact of the matter is, when have you played a PS4 game within the last 3 years, 3.5, 4 years back now, that had a swiping gesture on that touchpad? Probably not that many games, probably 0 games. The touchpad has been reduced to just another button. And now the unfortunate thing is Sony has to include another touchpad on PlayStation 5, because if it's going to be backwards compatible, it's going to have to play some of those PS4 games that use that touchpad. So they're complicating things when they add buttons. They're complicating things when they add the light bar. So at this point, don't add anything. Leave it the way it is. You can change the ergonomics. You can, make the triggers feel more responsive, things like that. I'm fine with that, but don't add another input method. Number 7, make sure PlayStation Now is the premier place to stream and download your games. Now, as of right now, PlayStation Now does have market leadership in terms of subscription services and revenue within that space. And now you can download 250 plus PS4 games to the hard drive. I'm not sure what they're really doing in terms of the future, if they're working on a way to lower the latency even further, or if they're going to try and get the price down even lower than it already is to make it a little bit more accessible, because people don't want to stream their games. But the thing about going into the next generation is that many new players are going to be jumping in. Not only is Microsoft going to bring Project xCloud in full force, but Google is also coming in with a streaming service. There's going to be some heat under Sony's ass. They have to be on top of things. So more or less, I would hope that Sony's doing a lot more to make sure PlayStation Now is going to be the best way to play games when it comes to streaming content. Number 8, PlayStation Plus right off the bat. Now, thankfully, Sony did this right away on PlayStation 4. We got Resogun right off the bat. At some point, we got Drive Club. Drive Club was supposed to be a launch PlayStation Plus title. Didn't happen, obviously, but PlayStation Plus did come right away on PS4. But more importantly, with PS5, not only do we need it right out of the gate, but give away a good game. Give away something that... I'm not saying give away your number one seller, a big multi-million-dollar Sony IP, but make it substantial, make it something that people are going to care about, make it worthwhile. And so I think PlayStation 5, starting off with PlayStation Plus in a good way with possibly 2 or 3 games, probably not going to get that, but that's a bold statement to release a brand new platform and say, you know what, if you are currently a Plus subscriber, here's 2 games on us. And guess what, next month you're going to get 2 more, next month you're going to get 3 more. Get very aggressive with it. Number 9, take the share button to the next level. There's no doubt about it. The share button on PlayStation 4 was a huge success. In today's age, we are constantly sharing our gameplay, our screenshots. Every game has a photo mode nowadays. Everybody's live streaming. It's not going away. That's just the world we live in. PS5 certainly needs to take it to the next level, possibly record even more gameplay, make it more accessible to live stream. Maybe you could include a full-blown live stream editor. I mean, make it to the point where people can do what they can do on a desktop. And that kind of goes back to the one, wish list item we had previously. Make it more desktop friendly. I mean, put in these features where people can add in their green screen, add all these text overlays. I mean, don't let this thing fade into obscurity. Make the share button the premier way to share your content. I think Sony did very well with that on PS4, and so PS5 should do the same thing. And finally, for our last wish list item, it kind of encompasses everything more or less of what we talked about, but stay focused. I don't want this company to get complacent like they did with PlayStation 3. Just because they have market leadership with PS4, I don't want them to go into PS5 thinking, oh, we can sell an overpriced box, we can do this proprietary tech, we can block crossplay, we can do whatever we want because consumers are going to buy our box. That's not always the case. Yes, PS4 is doing incredibly well, but consumers will leave your platform and buy into something else if they feel that they're being wronged in some way or not being provided the needs that they want to have fulfilled. The fact of the matter is, people are really enjoying their PS4s right now. There's no reason to jump into PS5. There's a lot of great games for PS4. PS4 is cheap. People feel as though PS4 is just getting started. And so you kind of have to show people, this is why the next generation is going to be so great. We've got X, Y, and Z, and PS4 doesn't have all those things. And so it's kind of this whole list, right? You know, deliver all these features, just make a great product, and don't lose sight of what's important. Take care of your developers like you did with PS4. Take care of those independent developers like you did with PS4. Make sure it's a low price like you did with PS4. And so I hope going into PS5, Sony will do what's right. And if they can deliver all these items on this list, and then some, and then all those features that you guys might be looking for that I didn't even talk about in this video, I think at that point Sony will have no problem selling PlayStation 5. And that is it. That is my PlayStation 5 feature wish list. And by all means, let me know what you want to see in PS5 because I probably overlooked one or two things. And also, sorry the video is kind of long. I babble on way too much. I'm going to have to cut a lot of footage to try and get this video down to a reasonable amount. But yeah, that's just what I do on this channel apparently. But hey, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't yet, subscribe for the best PlayStation news, reviews, and updates here on YouTube. And that's essentially it. So that's it for me in this video, and I will see you all in my next one. You take it easy.